Get this. The imperative. What is it? It's sometimes in books and online called a tense, but actually it's really a mood, a grammatical mood, not a bad mood, although it may put you in a bad mood when it gets complicated. We use it in English when we tell people what to do, and it's also used in Irish. But how? There's a simple side and there's a far more complex side, which isn't often gone into online. So the imperative isn't the only way we may get people to do something for us in language. There are ways we can soften the asking to be more polite, changing things to a question like, could you please get this? Rather than the way I started by saying, get this. If you think about something like, dún do chlab, shut your mouth, we could also take that out of the imperative and say something like, would you mind please shutting your mouth? You see what I mean? It alters the tone somewhat. But the blunter form is the imperative, and we've all been on the receiving end of it, I'm sure. Get this. Do as you're told. Learn Irish. Study hard. Stop procrastinating. Learn your verbs. Wash your hands. Pay attention. Or as Bobby Lee said abruptly to Bernie this week in Rosnaroon, just fai do chóta agus imilat. It's an order, it's a command, it's an instruction. We may not think about it in English so much because it's fairly simple. We just use the infinitive without the to. We say, think about it. And in the negative in English, we just put do not or don't in front of that. So how is it done in Irish? Well, the good news is, if it's a single person we're speaking to, just one person, it's fairly simple. You just take the base form or the dictionary form of the verb. Dún an doras, shut the door. Dún an doras. Oscail an doras, open the door. Oscail an doras. If you want to make those negative, just as we use don't or do not in English, we use ná in Irish. Ná dún an doras. Don't shut the door. However, if the verb begins with a vowel, ná puts an H in front of it, or H if you prefer. Ná hoscail an doras. Ná hoscail an doras. Don't open the door. We could get even fancier and use the saying ná hoscail doras na hiróge. Don't open the door to troubles, which is the Irish equivalent of saying let sleeping dogs lie, something you might also hear on an Irish soapy. Here are some examples you'll often hear if you watch Rosnaroon. Abramache, abramache. Say it, spit it out. Ná haber. And sometimes ná habere. Now, ná haber is kind of don't say it as in, oh no, don't say it, not that. Whereas ná habere is more like don't mention it when somebody thanks you. You also often hear be curamach, be careful, because you never know what might happen to you in a little fictional village on the coast of Connemara. And we hear quite often one that is a second person imperative and means leave here, but is used to mean let's go, let's leave here. Fagshaw, fagshaw. See how often you hear that if you're watching that program. Okay, so those are the singular form when you're talking to one person. But what about if you're speaking to a group? You're a teacher, or you're giving a lecture, or you're just speaking to your whole family or your whole group of friends. That's when it gets more complicated in Irish. In English, we just use the same root of the verb no matter how many people we're ordering about. Go to the movies, Mum. Go to the movies, you two. It stays as go in both situations. But in Irish, the plural form will be different. That can be broken down according to verb type. I've done a lot of digging on this, and most resources don't make it very clear, or they just leave it off altogether and give you the simplest form and say there are exceptions. We can go with how the Collins Easy Learning Irish begins in the grammar book by looking at the first conjugation, which is the regular verbs that mostly have one syllable, with some exceptions, but mostly have one syllable. And say if the verb's last vowel is broad, we add egi, A-I-G-I fada. So dun becomes dunigi. Stop becomes stoppigi. You'll also often hear in Rosnarun, fan second. Well, fun is the singular and it becomes funigi. So following that general rule, you can hear when you hear that eggy sound, it means more than one person is being told what to do. If the verb's last vowel is slender, we add igi, I-G, I fada. So rich, run, becomes rihigi. Esht, or listen, becomes eshtigi. The main thing to grasp here is that if you're hearing that agi or igi sound on the end, it's an imperative in the plural telling more than one person to do something. Conversely, when you're not hearing it but using it, you need to add those endings if you mean for more than one person to act. If these verbs end in IGH, we take that off and put igi instead. So te becomes tegi, te. So you're telling someone to heat that, te, tegi. I've taken these examples from the Collins Easy Learning Irish Grammar, but I'm not going any further with that one because it does become a bit of a rabbit hole. But O'Sheill's Learning Irish has a short, clearly laid out table summarising what happens with regular verbs in the plural. So let's have a look at that. He has some example sentences building on the ones that were given in the singular. So you can see the verbs in there, glánigi and nigi, legi, and you can see brishigi. And then underneath he explains, it's a bit jammed in there, type 1 and type 2. So type 1, you see where we add the A, he's got that in brackets in case it's just the IG, I fada. And type 2, where you've got verbs like sali becomes saligi with a longer E sound. Type 2 gets a different ending added on, igi. I've kind of slightly exaggerated that to hear the difference. Notice that in verbs like oskal, that syllable kind of collapses and it becomes oskligi, imish, and imrigi, imrigi. But they don't cover what happens with the irregular verbs, and for that again it's just a matter of memorizing. And I'll put up here a little block from the Collins which explains those quite clearly. You can just memorize them in the plural. They're easy because in the singular they use the base form as always. Be becomes bigi in the plural, bigi, tagagi, tegi, fekigi, and so on. I think that they're so often used that they would soon become familiar. Now we're used to having to learn those in other circumstances. I hope that's been helpful. If you want more videos on the Irish language, my learning experiences, things I've come across as I study, check out the Irish language playlist on my channel and please subscribe.